Mhm.
Welcome, everyone, to the May, can you believe it's May, 2023 Hudson Valley Gospel Festival Zoom. This is our monthly presentation that's always on the first Monday of the month, and we feature some aspect of gospel music or African American life in the Mid-Hudson Valley and beyond. And we're thrilled to have with us today the trans art, and they're going to give us a history of Pinkster. But I have an announcement before that. For those of you who are new, the Hudson Valley Gospel Festival is a program of Arts Mid Hudson's folk arts program, and I am the folk arts program manager. Arts Mid Hudson started life as the Dutchess County Arts Council 60 plus years ago, and then became Arts Mid-Hudson when we started working in Ulster and Orange counties as well as Dutchess. And we are thrilled to sponsor and work with the community on the Gospel Festival. This year, the Gospel Festival will take place on Saturday, September 30th at 7 p.m. And it will be at First Congregational Church on Mill Street in Poughkeepsie. And we are so excited. The acoustics are amazing. It is a church that is inclusive of all members of all communities. So we're very excited to work with them. If you have any interest in being on the committee, or if you want to be in our festival choir, I will put my email in the chat and you can get a hold of me and I can make sure you get to the right people. Tonight, we have a very special presentation on Pinkster from Trans Art. And with us tonight are Greer Smith, the founder of Trans Art, and I quote, legendary percussionist Chief Baba Neil Clark, who's the musical director of Pinkster. And I am so excited that not only will you be presenting, but this year that the Hudson Valley Gospel Festival Choir will be a part of the festivities. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Chief Baba Neil.
Oh, okay.
Well, before Chief Baba Neal, I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us this year and let you know that other members of the Trans Art team are also on the call. We have Maggie Inge, our Director of Development. We have
Hi,
Renee.
Meg. Hey.
we have Renee Boyd, who does our education programs and engagement.
Hi,
So,
Renee.
Hi,
and
everyone.
and
Hey.
Moikansi and Gama, who is producing our Pinkster Festival. I think she's still here. She may not be, but we're all glad to be able to join you this evening. And I
Hello
would
there. I'm here. Thank you.
terrific. And I would like to encourage you to spread the word about Pinkster because it's growing and it took place throughout the Hudson Valley. So us being able to do things on the other side of the river in Poughkeepsie and Dutchess County are something that we're looking forward to. We're hoping this is just the beginning of spreading the good news. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Barbara Neal Clark, who has been carrying the story of Pinkster on his shoulders for a very long time, and it's finally getting the traction that it deserves via him. And I cannot tell you how pleased we are that we are all working together on this with him. So with that, Chief Barbara Neal Clark, it's on you.
Just one thing. I'm sorry, Baba, hold on a second. If everybody could, except for Chief Baba Neil Clark, could turn off their video.
I really don't mind other faces being
okay.
there. I really don't. You know, it gets kind of lonely talking to an empty screen, and it gets kind of and to be honest with you, it gets kind of impersonal. And this subject is not an impersonal subject. So I think it's one that, in order to really identify to really experience what Pinkster is about, it's important to identify with Pinkster, to identify with what Pinkster means, to identify with the people, the ancestors who engaged in Pinkster, whose charge we are attempting to pick up and move forward, especially in the face of energies and agendas that are prevalent in the society today. So it's very important. But what I would like, Greer, before you leave us or before you leave the podium, we have a presentation here with some slides. And would you just give a little bit of a background on trans art, who trans art is, what trans art is doing, and how Pinkster kind of segues, with that. And then I'll pick up the story of Pinkster and what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Who's at the controls? Who can advance this to?
Gansi said, just let her know.
Okay. About us, Trans Art and Cultural Services has been doing programming in the Mid-Hudson Valley since 1996. We do the art history and popular culture of people of African ancestry. That being said, we are now moving into our first home. We had been acting as a institution without walls. Now we'll have walls. A lot of you know us or may not know us for Jazz in the Valley, which is not the only jazz festival in the Hudson Valley, but the longest running. We are very emotional this year in particular because in 2000, our very first Jazz in the Valley, which took place at the West Park Winery, was done with great generosity by the wonderful Alma Jamal, who just passed away. So that was very personal to me. And we have been blessed with the support of artists of great renown and continued relationship with them. And we continue to bring them to the Hudson Valley. So not just people of African ancestry, but all people can see the best of what we have to offer and be inspirational to our young people, which is what brings me to Pinkster. Pinkster, of course, knowing that's us under construction, we are moving fast. This is we're in there actually now, and it's a historic. It's yes, it's a historic house on the corner of Henry and Furnace. What's so significant is it's right in what would be considered the Black community, and to have this level of excellence in this area, in that community, means an awful lot. And people can walk by, as they do right now, and say, "Oh my!" And that's what we want. We want to be inspirational to not just our young people, but to folks that have been in here toiling in the soil like we have for a long time, that there's hope with perseverance. Pinkster actually was a project that I workshopped at the New York National Endowment on the Arts in 2019. They were looking for starting a creative placemaking initiative nationwide. They want to show what goes on in small towns, big towns, and we're trying to position themselves just not a funding agency for cities like New York and Chicago. And out of these thousands of people that wanted to participate, they only wanted 6. They picked trans art as one of the 6. That was a big deal. And what's been happening for the last 2 years is a result of that. And we're very proud of that. So having the opportunity to work with the Gospel Fest is a big deal for us too. Pinkster has many layers. We're making it contemporary. We're showing all of the many versions of not just the African American experience, but what is basis for what we call Western popular culture. If we're singing it, if we're dancing it, if we're counting multi rhythms, that's where it came from. If it's got hot sauce, that's where it came from, us. And we will let you know, and let you know loudly and proudly whenever we can. With that, my friend and brother, Chief Barbara Neal Clark, you got the stage.
Thank you, Greer. So, hi everybody. Yeah, where did that come from? So, I've been involved with Pinkster for more than 20 years. I'm an African American from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And when I first came in contact with Pinkster, I had no idea what it was. And this is more than 20 years ago. I got hired to participate in a Pinkster event in Tarrytown, New York, at Phillipsburg Manor, and it was just a gig. It was just a performance for me. And during the course of doing it, I discovered that the person who I was portraying, King Charlie, was an actual African drummer who had a long career in the Hudson River Valley, which flew in the face of everything that I knew about the presence of the African drum in North America. That intrigued me because I've been doing arts and education programs since the 1970s. And we always felt that we were the ones who were bringing the African drum back because the African drum had been taken away from enslaved Africans when they were brought to North American continent, only to find out that 350 years ago, there were African drummers who were actually playing and singing in African languages, and other people who were publicly and proudly celebrating their African heritage, their pre-enslavement African heritage, right here in the Hudson River Valley. Now, I was always under the impression, led to believe that Congo Square was the only place that something like that took place. And Congo Square had its own dynamics, and it morphed and had contributions that went up the Mississippi River and gave birth to so many things that we know today as American music, African American music, and by extension, American music. Now, come to find out, some of those very dynamics were occurring here in the Hudson River Valley going back to the 1640s. And as I proceeded to do my own research, only to find out what this was about that I didn't know anything about. And here I was, an African drummer, and I didn't know about it. So I was sure that a lot of other people did not know about it. And the more I dug, the more I found. And the more I found, the hungrier I got to find more. So I'm happy to say that, as Greer said, we're getting traction now about Pinkster, especially on the heels of Juneteenth being made a national holiday. Juneteenth is a singular event that took place in Texas. It was a one-day thing, and the whole country is celebrating that. If the whole country can celebrate Juneteenth that took place in Texas, then why can New York State not celebrate an event that occurred here for almost 200 years in the Hudson River Valley, where people were not just celebrating their emancipation from enslavement, they were celebrating their heritage that predated enslavement. And they did it proudly, which again flies in the face of, Africans were stripped of their heritage, and they forgot their heritage, and they abandoned their heritage. And this new identity emerged in North America? Well, yes, a variation on the theme emerged in North America because so much of what we know about the contributions of Africans in America, African Americans, whatever we want to call African descended people in North America, so much of what the contributions are to the African American culture, to American culture, to the building of America today is rooted in the cultures of the people prior to them being enslaved. Okay, so these are the people. These are the people, and this is, I believe this is a very important aspect of the filter that we should be viewing, or that we can be viewing the whole idea of the Pinkster Festival, that we should and could be viewing this event through, this occurrence through. Nancy, can you back up the slide just a little bit? I just want to go back to that because I wanted to give my own overview. But okay, so I'm going to get rid of, I got everybody's face up. Okay, so Pinkster celebration originated 17. Okay, so I like to say that it is the oldest African festival in America. It occurred for almost 200 years, from 1640 to almost 1840. It was outlawed in Albany in 1811. Okay. You can move those slides forward as I'm talking, Gansi. Thank you. And what you're seeing here are images of what we engaged in last year, with the procession, with the historical reenactment you see here at the top photo, with African dance in the bottom photo. It's important to understand that the first Africans that were brought, to this region of North America were from Angola. Angola, which is a Congo culture. And that was the beginning of the Pinkster celebrations. It's important to remember that enslaved Africans that were brought here were not necessarily converted to Christianity. Okay, let me back up. What are we talking about when we talk about Pinkster? We're talking about the Dutch expression of Pentecost, 50 days after Easter, when the Holy Spirit descended on the disciples and they began to speak in tongues. It was the beginning of the gospel, spreading the good news. And it is recognized as the beginning of the Christian church, when people were going forward and spreading the word, the good news, spreading the word of the teachings of Jesus by the disciples, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when the Dutch celebrated Pentecost, they called it Pinkster. They call it Pinkster in the Netherlands to this day. So it is a Dutch word. It is a Dutch expression of the celebration of the Pentecost. The nature of enslavement in the Hudson River Valley, in the North in general, was different from the nature of enslavement. The experience in the South, the experience of the enslaved is different. It was not as stringent. There were a greater number of slaves in the North than there were in the South, but it was less per capita. So the Dutch would give their enslaved Africans time off. When the Dutch were going to church to celebrate the Pentecost, Pinkster, they would give their enslaved time off. and a freedom to celebrate the holiday in any way that they saw, to travel and meet family members. They were allowed to trade. They were allowed to trade surplus goods from their gardens. They were allowed to trade manufactured goods that they had created. So we're talking about a time and a spirit of freedom that is different from the everyday. And the Pinkster throughout the Hudson River Valley, from the northern ends to the southern end, to Long Island, even into New Jersey, there were different versions, different iterations of the way the Pinkster Festival would take place. Sometimes it would be in rural areas. It might be for a day or two. In Albany, it could take place for 2 weeks, over several days of public celebration. What we know today as Capitol Hill in Albany was Pinkster Hill. We have documentation that demonstrates that, where the area was cleared, a festival ground was created, there were booths, there were dancing grounds, people were documented as playing African drums, singing in African languages, having competitions, people doing dance and music representative of their village or town or region in Africa. So this was all going on in the Hudson River Valley, in Albany, in New York City. Talks about people going to witness the Pinkster Festival or in the area of Wall Street, or Bowling Green in New York City. And we know that it took place on Long Island. We know that it took place in Brooklyn. We know that it took place in Kingston. Sojourner Truth was seeking to return to Pinkster because of her memories of the Pinkster celebration. So we have all of this documentation of the Pinkster Festival that was taking place, where people were celebrating the Pentecost, but very much like when we celebrate Christmas. You know, it's not all about going to church. It's not all about the religious aspect of it. There is a cultural aspect of it. There are no pine trees and there's no Santa Claus in the regions where Jesus was born. But we celebrate Christmas with pine trees and giving gifts, reminiscent of the Three Kings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Halloween, All Hallows Eve, Easter. Everybody that goes and wears the Easter bonnet is not necessarily spending all day in church. It's a time of celebration that is inspired by that event. Well, the Pinkster Festival is inspired by that event, but it is cultural. It is musical. It is dance. It is food. It is food ways. It is a spirit of freedom. It comes in conjunction with the springtime, which is a time of rejuvenation, of renewal. So all of these dynamics are folded into what we're talking about when we talk about the Pinkster celebration or the Pinkster festival. I think it's really important that we celebrate it because, again, the contextualization that comes out of these initiatives right now between Juneteenth and the 1619 initiative, where everything having to do with African-American history here is being contextualized in chains in the bottom of a boat, on an auction block, or on a plantation, or a manor. And this is not the beginning of African-American history. When we think about those people, and that's what I was saying earlier about identifying with the people, because Africans that were brought here were descended from royalty, aristocracy. They were people of leadership. King Charlie, the drummer that I portray, was descended from the royal lineage in Angola. We had doctors, we had herbalists, we had healers, we had scientists, we had blacksmiths. They were smelting iron in Africa. They were educators, they were scholars, they were teachers. Timbuktu was a great learning area, institution, universities, libraries. There were historians, there were politicians and diplomats. If we look at the richest man in history, anybody want to pull out their phone and look it up to verify, it was Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa was the emperor of the Mali Empire. Now, if you are the richest man in history, that means that there's money around. Where did the money come from? And it had to be accounted for. You had to have bankers. You had to have all of the institutions that surround that degree of wealth that you could make a Hajj to Mecca and spread around enough gold that you could devalue the economy in Europe. So that degree of wealth requires somebody's got to bank that. Somebody's got to account for that. Those were Africans. We have architects. When the Portuguese got to Africa and they looked at Angola and they looked at Benin, they saw cities that were laid out more organized and cleaner than Lisbon, where they came from. We had navigators. People were navigating the oceans. Musicians, composers, herdsmen, agriculturalists. All of these were the Africans who were enslaved. They were specifically targeted because they can grow rice. They didn't learn how to grow rice here. They were growing rice in Africa. They didn't learn how to smelt iron and work iron here. They were doing it in Africa. So these are the people who, given the opportunity to be free from their responsibilities and as enslaved people, took the opportunity to celebrate the heritage that they had that predated that enslavement. So when we talk about Pinkster, these are the people that we're talking about who were engaged in this celebration. Now, Pinkster was not only enslaved Africans, it was free people of color, and it was Europeans, because we have to remember that the Pinkster celebration is a Dutch expression of the celebration of the Pentecost. The Dutch were celebrating it before they came to this part of the world. They brought the celebration with them. But what happened was the manner in which the Africans were celebrating this holiday had such vitality, and that it gradually took over the nature of what the character of what the Pinkster Festival was about in many places, not everywhere. Some places you find them doing the maypole and they're doing totally and solely Dutch expressions, just like every place else. I heard stuff talking about the homeless and where they were being situated. There's some people that are going to resist. There are some people that are going to continue to suppress and oppress. So every place, let's be clear, every place that the Pinkster Festival took place in the Hudson River Valley did not have the African tone, texture, flavor to it. But in many places, it did. Many significant places, as I said, in Albany, in New York, in Bowling Green. So much so in Albany that it was outlawed by the Albany Common Council in 1811. Um, they claim because people were getting out of hand and it couldn't be controlled. But there were also concurrent events. You had the Haitian Revolution, and you had a lot of events that made people be cautious about giving enslaved people too much freedom. And Pinkster could be seen as people of African descent having too much freedom when they're celebrating their culture and their heritage. The enslavers were very savvy about the fact that they needed to erode or erase the enslaved's identification with their pre-enslavement heritage as a mechanism to oppress them. If they didn't know anything but their identity as slaves, as enslaved, they would be easier to control. They would be easier to exploit. So, but as I said, as time went on, the vitality of Pinkster was such that the Albany Common Council decided, okay, it's time for us to put a cap on this. But that being said, there's documentation that Pinkster events took place going forward until the 1840s, even though the Albany Common Council outlawed it in 1811. So when we think about the vitality of Pinkster, it occurred under the Dutch and then under the British and then under the independent United States. So that speaks to the vitality under three regimes, 1640 to 1840. Three regimes, there were Pinkster events that took place, almost 200 years. How old is the United States? Let's put that in context. How old is the United States? Let's think about us sitting here in the United States and taking for granted the United States. How old is it? 1776 to 2023. Somebody do the math. But anyway, when we 1640 to 1840, that's a significant amount of time that the Pinkster Festival took place that until the 1970s had almost been forgotten about. And then during the 1970s, there were iterations of Pinkster festivals taking place to bring us to where we are today. What time do we have? So let's open it up for some questions. Because I like to know what people are thinking about the things I'm talking about, and let's see where the conversation goes. So if everybody can come on screen, well, maybe I just need to bring you on screen because.
Are you going to go back to the? Are you going to go back to the PowerPoint, or are you done with it?
Nancy, take that forward. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so here we go. Let me
Can I jump? I want to jump in here for a second.
Come on, yeah, come on, please.
I wanted everyone to. I don't know if anyone had experienced the being in the Old Dutch Church and why it's significant. But since you guys are going to be singing in there, I wanted you to just see the majesty and can't wait for the Holy Ghost to come through there when you guys come. So the Old Dutch Church, as we know, the people that were the owners and made money from the Dutch West India Company worshipped in the Old Dutch Church. And during that time, the enslaved Africans who they owned could come, they baptized them in there, they could get married in there, but if they died, they could not be buried there, or so we had to find someplace else to bury Black folk. In the inn in Kingston, they buried them in Pine Street and various other places. So that duplicitous way folks had dealt with us always was there. Most recently, however, the Old Dutch Church has been apologized for their participation in the triangle slave trade, and this congregation in particular makes itself a community facility for folks to come in, worship, not just worship, but to use the facility like we are doing during Pinkster. And I cannot wait to hear the voices in there. The acoustics are wonderful. One of the things that we are doing with Pinkster to make it relevant and for folks to get it, we are concentrating, because we've got 400 years of stories to tell. We are concentrating on the people that came here in the bottom of the slave ship and what they brought with them when they came. So we will be talking about people from Congo, Angola. Excuse me, Carmen. Does Carmen have her hand up? I don't know, but we'll be talking.
She does.
About. Okay, I can't control that. Carmen, you got a question?
Yes. Well, I just had a comment. I don't know if Bob and Neil remembers me, but I was at Dutchess Community College, and we had him there to do his magic twice, and it was wonderful how he discussed the different rhythms of different cultures and how they could be identified, and he gave just marvelous history as he is tonight. And we went to the Pinkster Festival because he told us about it back then. That was about 10 years ago. And it was really a wonderful event. And I learned a lot. We learned a lot when we went there. So yes, I think it's great. And I hope that we will have an opportunity to participate.
Well, you're going to learn more this time, Carmen, because in conjunction with this, we have done an exhibition will be up at the Matthew Person House. And,
okay.
And in that exhibition, which is called Africans in America and Antiquity, in that exhibition, there'll be a chronology of the African experience in the Mid-Hudson Valley and the country in general, but also on view will be artifacts that were in use and are used in ceremony, in everyday life, and what have you, people from the Congo. We know from research that Sojourner Truth's heritage, which is why we're focusing on this, her father descended from the Ashanti people in Ghana. We know that her mom was from Angola, Congo region. She spoke Bakongo. And we are shining a light on that, giving everybody a taste. We will each year we will dig deeper, but we thought that it was necessary for folks to know about that warrior woman spirit. The film festival that is going on during this time, we are focusing on women, African women. Mamie Till is one of the women we'll be looking at. We're looking at the Woman King. It's important for me personally as creative head of this thing to make sure that folks understand the real spirit of what Africa is. We love Wakanda, but this is not Wakanda. We are talking about the continent of Africa and what it brought, what it is responsible for in world culture, not just here. So all of that will be happening during Pinkster Week. And if you can't come on Sunday, there's several other days to come and participate. But we are very excited about what will be happening during this week.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it. It's a wonderful event, and I'll be in Toronto until the 3rd, and so I'll be glad to come on the 4th. But yes, and I know, yeah,
And for you,
it's really
Carmen,
great.
What you're doing with the young people that you're working with during the summer, the exhibition will be up through the end of October. So if you don't make it during Pinkster Week, it'll be up throughout the summer. And when the colleges come back in town, we'll be bringing Professor Jeffries and
Oh, wonderful.
various other folk up to do those talks. So we're not doing it during the summer because when people are walking around in their flip-flops, they're not going to be interested in hearing about all of this stuff. But by the time Labor Day rolls around, we will be doing those kinds of programs. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
since you know people, if we need to do anything special for you, you know how to call me. So
Well, Frederick Douglass Day is July 29th, and we want to invite all of you to come for all of the festivities and free food. So that's July 29th, and we'll be celebrating Juneteenth here on Saturday, June 17th in Mansion Square Park. And so we would like everybody to participate. That's two of the things I can think of at the moment.
Well, I would like to, first of all, thank you, Carmen, for your kind comments about my presentation, Rhythm and Identity. That's very important. I much appreciate it. Um, you know, as I said in the very beginning, I was born here in the United States. I remember when I didn't know anything about Africa, nor did I want to identify with Africa because what I knew of Africa was Tarzan and Jungle Jim. And those people that were portrayed in Tarzan and Jungle Jim, I definitely did not want to. I saw nothing admirable that I wanted to identify with. Fortunately for me, as a teenager, I was given an African drum. I was actually given some bongos, which are African drums from Cuba, but I was given African drums, and it was in my pursuit to be a better player of those drums that the resource material that I had accessible to me had cultural information embedded in it. So in order to play the drums, I wanted to be the best drummer that I could be. And in order to be the best drummer that I could be, I needed to listen to the best drummers. And the best drummers were those people that were coming from cultures where the aesthetics surrounding the drum had not been eroded. And it was in that journey that I began to become informed about the depth and the variety of what African rhythmic expressions were all about, which was the birth of that presentation, Rhythm and Identity. And then the journey continued. And as I said, for me to arrive many years later at Phillipsburg Manor and to find out that the drum did not, in fact, disappear. It was outlawed. Yeah, it was outlawed. It was absolutely outlawed. But alcohol was outlawed, wasn't it? And prohibition, they were still drinking, weren't they? And marijuana was outlawed. And even though it was outlawed, people were still smoking to the point that today, whether we like it or not, marijuana has been legalized. So African culture and people's identification with it also was suppressed, but that did not mean that it occurred. And it's important for us to take the initiative that Carter G. Woodson gave us with Negro History Week, which became Black History Week, which became African American History Month. To find out about our heritage that the heritage of people of African descent in this country. Not because he was recommending Black studies departments, not because he was recommending the development of degrees, advanced degrees in Black studies, but because he recognized there was a need for a remedial understanding of the heritage of African people in this country. And when we think about it in that context, then we have to recognize that if one does not know Africa, one will not recognize Africa when it shows up. So in order to really understand anything that we're talking about, Africa, African expressions, African contributions in this country, if we do not know Africa, then we're not going to recognize those things as African, even though they exist.
Right. So that's absolutely correct.
And that's like going to the store and, you're supposed to be eating a low-fat diet or low-sodium diet, and you're not reading the ingredients on the package. You don't know what you're eating. You don't know what you're taking in. So when we look at the culture of America, we don't know what's African unless we know Africa. And then we can identify what it is. We can, regardless of what people say, if we know Africa, then we recognize Africa when it shows up. And that is all folded into what this is all about. It's about pulling the covers off a lot of stuff that has been purposefully obscured,
right,
purposefully dismantled, purposefully disconnected, because it was recognized in that dismantling, in that disconnection, that the efforts for oppression and exploitation could be much easier exercised.
Ashe. May I just say one more thing, please? And that is that Celebrating the African Spirit is an organization that is trying to unearth all of the contributions of enslaved Africans in the city of Poughkeepsie. That's proved to be a difficult task, but one of the things that we do is going into Poughkeepsie High School and talking to the youth about their history, how they fit into the history, and how they will be in 10 years, what will be their history. So our attempts are to communicate what the value of history and how to present it to young people that they see it from a different perspective. So that's also what we do in our summer intensive program with the students. So if you have any time this summer you'll be busy with your other program, right, Maggie? Because we start our programs on the same day. But it would be wonderful if we could exchange skills on a day. Hopefully, that would really be great. And there is a statewide committee on celebrating 2027, which is the 200th anniversary of the emancipation in New York State. So that is another thing that is going on, and we're also, working with that. So
I had a question.
Yeah. Sheesh. Yeah, Ray.
And I because I'm over 50, I forgot what the question is, but one of the things I wanted to say is that, like the gentleman said, we need to understand Africa. Africa's big. Africa's many countries. I did have the opportunity one time to go to Africa. I went there twice, as a matter of fact. And Angola was one of the places that I went twice. I went to Luanda. Is it called Luanda, Angola? Is that the seaport? There was Portuguese when I went there, of course.
Yeah, Luanda, yeah.
Yes. So I went there then. But I got a chance to go around the Cape. And I got a chance to go on the East Coast too. I also went to Kenya. I went to I forget the name of the place. It's not too far from Nairobi, but they were all seaports. I went to Madagascar on the island, Majunga, and there's different cultures. There's different cultures in just about every African country that you hit there. African history, of course, is really world history, because Africa, of course, was the world basically. It was where it was created. The question is going to come back to me in a second, though. Pinkster, that's what the question was going to be about, and that's Pentecost, right? And Pentecost, and you explained it so eloquently. The Pentecostal church, however, came around some 300 years later. Was there any connection between the Pentecostal church, which like Church of God in Christ, and was there a connection with Pinkster and the Church of God in Christ, even though they were like 300 years apart? Do you know?
I would say, first of all, I don't know for sure. Okay. I would say that I don't know for sure. But in pursuit of an understanding of the answer to your question, it's important to recognize that Pinkster, again, is the Dutch expression of the celebration of the Pentecost. So, I have not really done a deep dive into the variations on the celebration of the Pentecost in different places, in different cultures, during different eras. And I think the answer to your question would be embedded in that exploration. That being said, what we're talking about in terms of an African expression here has everything to do with the dynamic that occurred here. It had everything to do with the fact that the Dutch were slaveholders, the British were slaveholders, and this Pinkster celebration took place under their watch, where the Dutch were celebrating Pentecost, and they gave their enslaved time off, and the enslaved chose to celebrate it in their own way, which was very infectious, and it influenced other people to jump on board. We have an element in our Pinkster celebration called dancing the plank. And when we do our procession through the streets, we have a plank. And the whole symbolism of that, dancing the plank, is to join in. No, don't just march along and sing and observe, but get involved. And that's what happened with Pinkster, is that people got involved. The Africans were doing it, but everybody got involved. Everybody was welcome, and everybody did participate. And I think that was part of the reason that it was outlawed, because some of the people participated so much that they lost their mind, and and then they decided they need to outlaw this thing before it got out of hand. So,
Maggie.
Yeah, just two things. There is almost zero connection between the Pentecostal church and the Dutch Reformed Church, which is what was present and still is present in America, the oldest church in America. And Pentecostal is a version of what became ultimately the Baptist Church, is an extension of the Baptist Church. But in addition to that, part of what I think makes our celebration, what distinguishes our celebration, is that we are engaging people, as Bob and Neil was saying. So you see on the slides, both somebody from the Pinkster Players and a young child dancing the plank. Because part of the reason that it was outlawed was that was that during Pinkster in New York State, the races mixed. People interacted with one another not as slave and master, but as people. And that coming together is actually one of the reasons that New York is credited with being the first northern state to actually outlaw slavery. And Pinkster is credited by many historians as being a key factor because people interacted together, and it's very hard to think of somebody as not being human after you've been to Pinkster with them.
Mm. Thank you.
Questions? Anybody?
Well, if there are no
I'll
more,
see you. I'll see you June 4th. That's all I have to say.
Great.
I will be there both days. If there are
The
no
celebration is a full week. It runs the week. The films, there are other opportunities to engage.
Right. Make sure you send it on to me. Make sure I have the schedules and everything, so that I can put it out on my social media. And I'm sure that, and we'll, do what we can to put some out on Arts Mid-Hudson as well. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Yeah, can I say one thing? This is Concy.
Sure.
I think the only thing that hasn't been mentioned is I'd say, beyond the fact that we have people of all ages participating in this version of Pinkster, when we created the program, our goal was to imagine what Pinkster would be like if it had never ended. So this is a very contemporary approach to a historic event. So we'll have historical events. So, we'll have virtual reality as part of the event. We'll have DJs as part of the event. We have, of course, film as part of the event. And our Pinkster celebration is from May 27th all the way to June 4th. And the reason why we programmed it in this way is because, we'd like to imagine that history continues and that we're a part of that, continuing history. So we hope you all will come out, and thank you for the time.
Oh, thank you so much for giving us your time. I also wanted to let you know that depending on how far forward you're going in the exhibit, I've been working on a history of the Peg Leg Bates Resort for the last couple of years. So if you'd like to include that in the exhibit, let me know, because I have some things that I can give you.
Am I muted? Oh, no, I'm not. Hi, thank you. In this particular iteration, we're not, but we have some stuff that we did do with peg legs and would want to do some other time. So I will definitely follow up and talk to you because we do own the original sign from Sampsonville Road.
You're kidding. I will be giving you a phone call very soon. Actually, I'll be up in Kingston on the 22nd, so you might hear a knock at the door.
So, because I have my own story, because I got to talk to Peg Leg, and as you know, when he went to get that award from the Palmetto Award, I talked to him just before he left, and he said, "Oh, baby, this is so exciting. Wait till I come back." And as you know, he never made it back. Yeah.
No, we'll definitely have to sit down and talk. And on that very note, let me end with the June Hudson Valley Gospel Festival Zoom presentation will be his singer, Miss Renee Bailey, being interviewed by a young singer, Rose Mariah Garcia. And we're very excited. So please join us on June, I believe it's June 5th, for that. And it'll be an interview / discussion between singers of two generations. So thank you. Okay.
I would just like to ask I would just like to ask everybody, spread the word. I appreciate the promotion, the promotion mechanisms, but I think it's important to just say Pinkster, talk Pinkster to people that you run into. One of the things I come to these organizational presentations late. I'm a musician, and as a musician, I interact people to people. Somebody else does the promotion for me. I interact people to people, and it always fascinates me. It has fascinated me for many years when I mention Pinkster to people and the expression on their face when they don't know anything about it. What is that? What is that? I've never heard anything about that. And so I think it's important. Yes, let's use every avenue, every mechanism, every method that we have to promote Pinkster, but let's not forget the interpersonal dynamics that occur when we mention Pinkster to somebody. So whatever you heard tonight, if you see somebody, mention it to them, because a lot of times that interpersonal, it may not have as big a spread, but I think very often has a bigger impact.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to seeing you on the 28th of May. Those of you who are in the choir.
And Eleanor, this is being recorded, correct? And people will be able to access this this presentation.
I will make the effort to get it on by Thursday. To get it out by Thursday.
Good. We do need to know.
Okay, Eleanor, I'd like to reiterate, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see all of you soon.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.